Hello, in this video today, I'm going to be discussing protocols that every network engineer or admin should know. It's not the internal routing protocols as in RIP or EIGRP or OSPF. It's more of the universal protocols that is essentially used everywhere. The first one we're going to talk about is not really a protocol, but it is Telnet. For those of you who don't know yet, Telnet is what we used to connect to network devices remotely. Another interesting thing about Telnet is data going through the connection is in plain text, so it's not secure. Also, with these protocols, I'm also going to provide you with the port numbers. It's very important to know port numbers. If you're going to be a network engineer or admin, majority of the times, not always, but you will end up touching firewalls and you will have to know what port numbers are used. Let's see. Telnet uses port number TCP port 23. Remember that. Next is SSH. SSH is the same as Telnet, pretty much. It's used for remote connection to network devices. Only difference being is data going through the connection is secured, encrypted. To enable SSH, it is a little different process. I'll probably be making a few videos on these protocols I'm showing you guys now in the near future. And SSH uses port number TCP22. Remember that. Telnet is port 23, SSH port 22. Next protocol is RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. Remote Desktop Protocol is used for remote connection to Windows desktops. Remember that. It's only for Windows. You can't use it for Mac. You can't use it for network devices. And it's used via a GUI interface, and a GUI is a graphical user interface. RDP uses TCP and UDP port 3389, so you get to choose. Next protocol is SMTP. For those of you who know, this is for email. Stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. It's used to send and receive mails or emails, and it's limited queuing on receiving end. So you will see that a lot of companies use SMTP and they combine it with one of the two next email protocols that I will be talking about. Port number it uses is TCP port 25. It also uses TCP port 465 when it's going through a secure connection over SSL or TLS. That port number is no longer recommended. And then it also uses TCP port 587, and this one should be used as default for email submissions. As I said earlier, next email protocol is IMAP4, Internet Message Access Protocol. And what it does is it copies email from an email server. So you're going to use SMTP to send out emails, and then you either use IMAP4 or you're going to use the next one I'm going to talk about. IMAP4 copies emails from an email server. It can be you can be disconnected from the system and still be able to process mail. And IMAP4 uses TCP port 143, also TCP port 993 for secure connection over SSL or TLS. Now, the next one, POP3, Post Office Protocol. Identical to IMAP4. The only difference being is it downloads the email from the mailbox server. And as soon as it gets downloaded, the email is deleted. It's gone. It's gone from the server. And if you lose that email, you're never going to see it again. That one uses TCP port number 110 and TCP port 995 for secure connection over SSL and TLS. So again, for email services, it's usually SMTP combined with either POP3 or IMAP4. Just remember that. Next protocol is FTP, File Transfer Protocol. As you can guess, what it does is it's used to transfer files. And it usually prompts for a username and password. Not so much a username, but it's for sure a password. And FTP uses TCP port 21 to establish a connection, but it uses TCP port 20 to actually transfer data. So remember that. It uses two ports. Next one is TFTP, Trivial File Transfer Protocol. Exactly like FTP, used for file transferring. Only difference is does not require username and password authentication, and it's not really used that much anymore. It uses UDP port number 69, and that's it. Next one is SFTP. As you can tell, it's another file transfer protocol, just that it is secure. It's the secure version of FTP. Simple as that. And data is transferred over an SSH connection. Now, this port number, you've seen this port number before, port 22. That is the exact same port number as SSH. Why? Because, well, SFTP requires an SSH connection, which means it's just going to go through that SSH connection. Next one we're going to talk about is DNS, Domain Name System. I'm sure most of you know what DNS is, what it does, but for those that don't, it translates domain names to matched IP addresses. So if you're browsing the web, then you will have to type in a name. Well, in the World Wide Web, it doesn't work like that. It uses IP address, and that's really all I got for DNS. Port number it uses, very important to know. TCP port 53. A lot of firewalls, when you're working with firewalls, when you're working with proxies and all that stuff, you gotta know what the DNS port number is. Very important. It's so common if you go into an interview and they ask you what port number DNS uses and you don't know, well, then you're SOL. And it also uses UDP port 53. So you can use TCP or UDP. Next one, HTTP. A lot of you already know what this is. Hypertext Transfer Protocol. HTTP is the foundation of data communication for the World Wide Web. Without HTTP, you're not going on Internet Explorer, you're not going on Firefox, you're not going on Chrome, you're not surfing the web. And it is an application layer protocol. So what does that mean? It's as what it says. It's an application layer protocol. It's how you see things instead of just numbers. You see images, you see videos, you see text, you see everything. Port number it uses. Very easy. A lot of you should know. But for those that don't, TCP port 80. Simple as that. HTTP, TCP port 80. Also one of the common port numbers you should know out in the field. Next, HTTPS. As you can tell, it's the exact same thing, just that it's secure. Now, what HTTPS is communication is encrypted by TLS. So usually, like if you go on to Amazon.com, it'll be HTTP. And then the second it takes you to a login page, it will you'll see it change from HTTP to HTTPS. And that's how you know that you can log in with your username and password and your connection is secure. Port number it uses, those who don't know should know, and those who want to know, it is TCP port 443. So HTTP port 80, HTTPS port 443. Remember those two. RTSP, Real-Time Streaming Protocol. This isn't really a common protocol, but it's one that you should just know. It is used for entertainment and communications system to control streaming media servers. So what it is it's like your Hulu, it's like your YouTube, it's like Netflix. It's used to stream. That's all it does. Uses port number TCP port 554 and also uses UDP port 554. Again, not a really important protocol you should know, but it's just there. Next one is SIP. Very important in the world of networking. Session Initiation Protocol. It's used for video and voice. Remember that. Video and voice. It is a gateway for VoIP, which is voice over IP. Now, when we're talking about VoIP, we're talking about SIP, H323, MGCP. Those are VoIP gateways. For those that this is not really related to network engineering, but if you're a VoIP admin, then you gotta know this stuff. Again, you do configure SIP onto routers if your company is using a VoIP system that requires a SIP trunk. I'm not going to get into too much details about that, but yeah, you can do more research if you want to know more about it. It uses port number TCP and UDP 5060. Remember that too. This is also important because if your company uses, if it's a data center or a call center, and all of a sudden no one's able to make calls out, and you have a firewall, make sure that port number is open. It also uses TCP and UDP 5061, which is encryption over TLS. Next one we're going to talk about DHCP. Very common in the network world. Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Very common. It dynamically assigns IP address to connected devices. You plug in your computer onto a switch, you need an IP address. You log in to Wi-Fi somewhere out in the public or in your network, you need an IP address. Everything runs off IP addresses. So DHCP, there's usually DHCP servers. Routers and switches can be used as DHCP servers too. It really depends on what your company's network is doing, but yeah, you can assign a router or a switch to be a DHCP server. DHCP uses port UDP port 67. Again, I'm not going to go into details of how these protocols work. Those you can, if you want to know more, you can research on your own. And UDP port 67 is the destination of the port server. UDP port 68 is the port used by the client. So remember, it uses two different ports. Next one, LDAP. Those of you that don't really know what LDAP is, I'm sure you kind of heard of LDAP already. LDAP, Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. What LDAP is, you'll hear stuff like it needs to go to an LDAP server. You'll hear that. It's used to gather and store user information. And one thing about LDAP is it's very commonly used with, you think LDAP, you think Active Directory. Active Directory, if you don't, those that don't know what it is, it's literally where every single user and passwords is stored in a company. That's what it is. LDAP uses port number TCP and UDP port 389. Just remember that. Again, if you're working with firewalls, this port, if it's not open, no one's going to be able to access an LDAP server to use their usernames and passwords. SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol. Very common in today's networks. It's used to collect information about network devices, and it's used for network management and network monitoring. That's basically all it does. Once you configure it, you'll send pretty much just information about the devices, not necessarily end users, but devices. SNMP uses port number UDP port 161 and UDP port 162. And I also forgot to mention earlier, for those of you that don't know what TCP is or what UDP is, TCP is Transmission Control Protocol, I believe. I think it is. Forgot. But anyways, that requires a three-way handshake, and it makes sure communication goes through all the way. UDP is User Datagram Protocol. User Datagram Protocol is pretty much a one-way. I don't want to say it is a one-way connection, but it seems like it. So what it does is data is sent, and there's no three-way handshake. There's no neighborship peering happening. Data is sent. If it gets lost or if something happens to the data, it doesn't care. Just goes through. Next, NTP. This is going to be the last protocol I'm going to talk about today. Network Time Protocol. Very important. I know I've seen a lot of companies that don't enable NTP, and it's just weird when you're trying to troubleshoot. As what NTP does is it synchronizes the time within a network. So if you can have a consistent time within your company's network, that will be very, very helpful when it comes to troubleshooting and network maintenance. When I say that, I mean I've logged into routers where the date is like 1970, and I'm thinking, wow, how do you troubleshoot that? But then if you're smart enough, you can figure it out. Just do a show log, and then you'll see what happens at that during that time log, and then just do a show clock. For Cisco, just do a show clock. For Alcatel, do a show time. So just do that, and you can kind of do the math, see how long it's been. But it just makes life harder if you have to do all that. NTP, very important. A lot of people don't use it, but a lot of people should. Port number. UDP port, very easy. 123. Simple as that. And that's all I'm going to talk about today. I will probably make a few videos in the near future regarding all these protocols I just talked about. I won't be doing it for all of them just because of resources that I don't have, but I'll do as much as I can. And again, thanks for watching this video. I hope it really helps you out. I mean, these are some of the unknown things or these are not the unknown, but these are the forgotten information that you really need to know when you go into an interview or when you go to just study. A lot of people forget to study these things, and then they go to an interview and they're like, oh crap, I used to know what it is, I don't anymore. But again, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe for more future coming videos. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.